Kaya Chakshuru Militan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privrajacharya Astotra Sata Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privrajacharya Astotra Sata Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Panchatattva Prabhu. And welcome to everyone for Thursday evening's Caitanya Caritamrta reading with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends. It is Thursday, November 2nd, 2023, and we are reading in Adi Leela, Caitanya Caritamrta, chapter 7, and Maharaj indicates that we're starting tonight with text number 83. And so, of course, we're very much looking forward to hearing from all the able-voiced participants in terms of more kirtan, reading, and commentary this evening. And thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Especially thank you, Maharaj, for continuing to be with us. Hare Krishna.
Daily 3. Oh. Shall I read? Should I read? Maybe I should read.
If you can, Prabhu, please start us off. That would be great.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Adi Lila, Chapter 7, Text 83. Krishna Nam Mahamantra es tasvabhav. Je jape tari Krishna upaje bhav. It is the nature of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra that anyone who chants it immediately develops his loving ecstasy for Krishna. Purport. In this verse, it is explained that one who chants the Hare Krishna mantra develops bhava, ecstasy, which is the point at which revelation begins. It is the preliminary stage in developing one's original love for God. Lord Krishna mentions this bhava stage in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 8. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata savam pravartate. Itimatva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who know this perfectly engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. Unquote. A neophyte disciple begins by hearing and chanting, associating with devotees, and practicing the regulative principles. And thus he vanquishes all of his unwanted bad habits. In this way, he develops attachment for Krishna and cannot forget Krishna even for a moment. Bhava is the almost successful stage of spiritual life. A sincere student orally receives the holy name from the spiritual master. And after being initiated, he follows the regulative principles given by the spiritual master. When the holy name is properly served in this way, automatically the spiritual nature of the holy name spreads. In other words, the devotee becomes qualified in offenselessly chanting the holy name. When one is completely fit to chant the holy name in this way, he is eligible to make disciples all over the world, and he actually becomes Jagat Guru. Then the entire world, under his influence, begins to chant the holy names of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Thus, all the disciples of such a spiritual master increase in attachment for Krishna, and therefore he sometimes cries, sometimes laughs, sometimes dances, and sometimes chants. These symptoms are very prominently manifest in the body of a pure devotee. Sometimes, when our students of the Krishna consciousness movement chant and dance, even in India, people are astonished to see how these foreigners have learned to chant and dance in this ecstatic fashion. As explained by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, actually this is not due to practice, for without extra endeavor, these symptoms become manifest in anyone who sincerely chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Many fools, not knowing the transcendental nature of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, sometimes impede our loudly chanting this mantra. Yet one who is actually advanced in the fulfillment of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra induces others to chant also. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains, Krishna Shakti Vinanahe Tar Pravartan. unless one receives special power of attorney from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he cannot preach the glories of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. As devotees propagate the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the general population of the entire world gets the opportunity to understand the glories of the holy name. While chanting and dancing or hearing the holy name of the Lord, one automatically remembers the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because there's no difference between the holy name and Krishna, the chanter is immediately linked with Krishna. Thus connected, a devotee develops his original attitude of service to the Lord. In this attitude of constantly serving Krishna, which is called bhava, he always thinks of Krishna in many different ways. One who has attained this bhava stage is no longer under the clutches of the illusory energy. When other spiritual ingredients, such as trembling, perspiration, and tears, are added to this bhava stage, the devotee gradually attains love of Krishna. The holy name of Krishna is called the Mahamantra. Other mantras mentioned in the Narada Pancharatra are known simply as mantras, but the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is called the Mahamantra. The second paragraph, it just sounds like, whether Prabhupada intends to or not, he's describing himself. The entire world under his influence begins to chant the holy names of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Thus all the disciples of such a spiritual master increase in attachment for Krishna. And therefore he sometimes cries, sometimes laughs, sometimes dances, and sometimes chants. And then there's an interesting turn of phrase here. Many fools, not knowing the transcendental nature of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, sometimes impede our loudly chanting this mantra, yet one who is actually advanced in the fulfillment of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra induces others to chant also. So there's a great potency in hearing from a pure devotee of Krishna. And this causes others to chant the holy names. Just by hearing the sound vibration of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra from such a advanced soul, other people become enlivened to chant as well. And as Prabhupada describes here, as devotees propagate the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the general population of the entire world gets the opportunity to understand the glories of the holy name. So there's some, it's interesting that Srila Prabhupada refers to this. He says that Lord Krishna mentions this bhava stage in Bhagavad Gita 10.8. This description, Buddha bhava samanvita, that reference to bhava is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada as describing this point at which revelation begins in the chanting of the holy names. It's mentioned by Krishna in this verse. Iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. And then, of course, he's talking about just a general sketch of how neophyte devotee begins by associating, following the regulative principles and so forth. And as he practices the regulative principles and associates with devotees, And through the process of hearing and chanting, it says here, he vanquishes all of his unwanted bad habits. That anartha nivritti stage comes. And then he develops attachment for Krishna and cannot forget Krishna even for a moment. And Prabhupada says, bhava is the almost successful stage of spiritual life. To be on that platform. Can't even imagine. The almost successful stage of spiritual life. Any comments? Is there anything in the chat? Mother Surabi Kunj?
Hare Krishna. Yes, Akendra Prabhu posted something in the chat. Immediately develops reminds me of a fertilized egg. The fully grown body doesn't instantly appear except in rare cases, but the body does immediately begin developing.
Here's another.
As Panchatattva Prabhu mentioned, one who is actually advanced in the fulfillment of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra induces others to chant also. Such an interesting choice of words. Advanced in the fulfillment of chanting. There's chanting, and then there's the fulfillment of chanting.
Yeah, I was struck by that turn of phrase also. What a nice way to describe it.
And Saraswati Mataji says, Pranams, stated that unless one has received the power of eternal Krishna, cannot spread the glories of the Mahamantra. So how can a neophyte begin to preach the glories of the Mahamantra?
Well, he begins on the order of his spiritual master.
And Maharaj says, it's notable the way Srila Prabhupada describes the power of the holy name, how the holy name spreads its influence.
Yeah. The holy name is a person.
And Maharaj adds, when we chant and follow regulative principles. Saraswati Mataji says, we hear that many advanced devotees conceal their symptoms of bhava, but Sahajiyas relish imitating and fooling others about having bhava.
It's a pretty packed purport. While chanting and dancing or hearing the holy name of the Lord, one automatically remembers the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because there's no difference between the holy name and Krishna, the chanter is immediately linked with Krishna. Thus connected, a devotee develops his original attitude of service to the Lord. And he reaches this stage of bhava, and he always thinks of Krishna in many different ways.
Maharaj says, amazing purport. And Akendra Prabhu says, regarding Indians' reaction to Westerners chanting, this is not due to practice, for without extra endeavor, these symptoms become manifest in anyone who sincerely chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Seems like practice here could refer to rehearsal, but ecstasy is just what happens when chanting takes place properly.
Yeah. Sometimes when we distribute books in an airport, I don't know, perhaps it was just a moment of taking a break, but I would, if I met someone who was interested and took the books. And then I needed to take a breather. I would sit down for a moment and I would look at the book and think, okay, he or she, they're going to open the book and this is the first thing they're going to look at. This is the next thing. Imagine someone getting this opportunity to read this purport, this verse in purport.
Kendra Prabhu says, unless one receives special power of attorney from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he cannot preach the glories of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Does power of attorney simply refer to the spiritual master's order? Has everyone in ISKCON received power of attorney status?
When a person is an attorney, he's passed his bar. I may be taking a more literal definition of power of attorney, but I guess what I want to say is that one receives the order of the spiritual master, but in that order, there's some expectation. One follow the regulative principles, that one carefully chant 16 rounds of the Maha Mantra daily, and so forth. They're just like any such position, there's responsibility that goes with that power. And Krishna is describing here. The power of attorney ultimately is coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if Krishna likes, he can withdraw that power of attorney. If we abuse the privilege, then the power of attorney can be withdrawn.
Kendra Prabhu says,
we see
power of
it happen.
attorney simply means authorized to act on another's behalf. No bar exam required.
I was going to say, we've seen sometimes that power of attorney gets withdrawn. We go to the next verse. Would someone like to read? Yeah, Punar Mushaka Bhava. Again, become a mouse. Who would like to read? Mother Saraswati, would you like to read the next verse?
Pranams to everyone. Let me just get to it. Krishna Visayaka Prema Parama Purushartha Yara Agetrana Tulya Chari Purusharth. Translation: Religiotic, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation are known as the four goals of life. But before love of Godhead, the fifth and highest goal, these appear as insignificant as straw in the street. Purport: while chanting the holy name of the Lord, one should not desire the material advancements represented by religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and ultimately liberation from the material world. As stated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the highest perfection in life is to develop one's love for Krishna. Prema Pumartha Mahan Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matam Idam. When we compare love of Godhead with religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, we can understand that these achievements may be desirable objectives for Bubu Gush, or those who desire to enjoy this material world. and mumukshus, or those who desire liberation from it, but they are very insignificant in the eyes of a pure devotee who has developed bhava, or the preliminary stage of love of Godhead. Dharma, I keep mispronouncing this word, religiosity, artha, economic, sorry?
Religiosity.
Right. Artha, economic development, kama, and moksha, sense gratification, and moksha, liberation, are the four principles of religion that pertain to the material world. Therefore, in the beginning of Srimad-Bhagavatam, it is declared dharma projihita kaitvo tra, cheating religious systems in terms of these four material principles are completely discarded from Srimad-Bhagavatam, for Srimad-Bhagavatam teaches only how to develop one's dormant love of God. The Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of Srimad-Bhagavatam, and therefore it ends with the word Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. Bhagavad Gita 18.66. To adopt this means one should reject all ideas of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, and fully engage in the service of the Lord, which is transcendental to these four principles. Love of Godhead is the original function of the spirit soul, and it is as eternal as the soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This eternity is called Sanatana. When a devotee revives his loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it should be understood that he has been successful in achieving the desired goal of his life. At that time, everything is automatically done by the mercy of the holy name, and the devotee automatically advances in his spiritual progress.
Thank you. Nice reading. Can you make some comment on the verse and purport?
Yeah, it just comes to me that mostly people are interested in the four purusharthas. It's really hard for them to get beyond that and see that these four things don't really are not the highest objective. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. But a lot of people seem to find it really hard to give up on this, and there's been times when I've attended different lectures, not necessarily in this sampradaya, but in a different sampradaya, and the people just seem to be stuck on these four things. And as soon as the talk comes of them giving this up and actually aiming for Krishna prema, to them it's really hard. They just think, no, we just want to carry on with these four things. These are the success of life, and the other thing is not as important. So it's really, this is what impressed me to Srila Prabhupada's all his books, because he makes it so clear that that is just completely meaningless in a way. Unless you aim for the highest goal of life, which is to serve Krishna and attain Krishna prema, then everything else is just in a way useless. Thank you, Haribol.
Thank you. Any other comments?
And Kendra Prabhu says, when he says one should reject all ideas of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Wait a minute. And fully engage in the service of the Lord. What is the practical means of rejecting ideas? If the mind is full of such ideas, do we just try to ignore them?
Therefore, regulated life is recommended. Desires may remain there, just as one in traditional Vedic culture, in the ashrams, one graduates from brahmacharya and so forth. If he reaches a certain age and desires to have a relationship and a family and so forth, then he enters grihastha life. But with his proper training, he's in a position to continue his gradual development in spiritual life. So there's some scope for his material desires to be fulfilled, but at the same time in a regulated fashion. So no, in that sense, they're not given up, but they're regulated. And if one is fortunate, has had good spiritual training, he reaches a certain age and says, enough of all of this. Now let me make continued progress and enter Vanaprastha. That's the outline. But all of that outline is meant to describe something that's going on in terms of an inner transformation. Because a person should come to understand that even in regulation, material pursuits and the attempt to satisfy material desires just lead to more and more frustration. It's not a way to achieve peace and happiness. But it's certainly a better life under regulation than it is an unregulated life like we see all around us. So rejecting all these ideas is absolutely correct. You're supposed to reject them. If you're not capable for some reason or other, then there's a regulated process by which you become capable. Therefore, the four regulative principles, therefore chanting, therefore taking shelter of a spiritual master, following his instructions, surrendering, and so forth. All these steps are there. Like that.
Maharaj says, there is something to be said for ignoring them.
Yeah.
And Kendra Prabhu says, I suppose we can pray for Krishna to remove the desires from the heart. Meanwhile, seeking advanced association of those persons who are actually
Free.
Those who are actually free, right? Maharaj says all good points, Panchatattva Prabhu. Oh,
But anybody,
at least we should know these are not the goal of life.
Yeah. We have some fine examples in our International Society for Krishna Consciousness of persons who, from their young age, did not pursue material desires, which they could have. Their bodies were young, senses were strong, but they took the order of their spiritual master very seriously and were able to ignore the tantalizing attractions of material life. They rejected them, and they're successful. It can be done. But if one doesn't have that platform, bhakti yoga is so powerful that even if one has to enter into the grihastha ashram and so forth, he can still make advancement. There's no room, Prabhupada talks about this somewhere. He says there's no room for this kind of life for the strict followers of, say, impersonalism or jnana. There's just no room for married life. But bhakti yoga is so powerful that one is carefully following his spiritual master's instructions, and even in married life, he or she can make advancement in Krishna consciousness. Such a nice process. You want to read that, Surabhi Kunj?
Kendra Prabhu said, oneself in good association, striving for attentive chanting and regular hearing can help strengthen the intelligence so we don't get carried away by desires for lesser things.
Thank you. We'd like to read Krishna Kanteya. You read from Caitanya Caritamrta last time. Would you like to team up? I'll read the transliteration, and then you can read the English and the purports. Would you like to do this again?
Okay, we can try.
Okay, we're at text 85.
Yeah.
I'll give it a try, and then you can give it a try. Panchama Purushartha Premanandamrita Sindhu Mokshadiyananda Jar Nahi Eka Bindu. Go ahead.
For a devotee who has actually developed bhav, the pleasure derived from dharma, artha, kama, and moksha appears like a drop in the presence of the sea.
Krishna Name Phala Prema Sava Shastre Koi Bhagye Yetse Prema Tomai Parila Udoy.
The conclusion of all revealed scripture is that one should awaken his dormant love of Godhead. You are greatly fortunate to have already done so.
Premar Swabhave Kare Chittatanuk Shobha Krishnera Charana Pratye Upajay Lobha.
It is a characteristic of love of Godhead that by nature it induces transcendental symptoms in one's body and makes one more and more greedy to achieve the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord.
Premara Swabhave Bhakta Hase Khande Kai Unmata Ya Nache Iti Uti Dhai.
When one actually develops love of Godhead, he naturally sometimes cries, sometimes laughs, sometimes chants, and sometimes run here and there, just like a madman. Okay. In this connection, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami says that sometimes persons who have no love of Godhead at all display ecstatic bodily symptoms. Actually, they sometimes laugh, cry, and dance, just like a madman. But this cannot help one's progress in Krishna consciousness. Rather, such artificial agitation of the body is to be given up when one naturally develops the necessary bodily symptoms. Actually, blissful life manifests in genuine spiritual laughing, crying, and dancing. It is symptom of real advancement in Krishna consciousness, which can be achieved by a person who always voluntarily engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. If one who is not yet developed imitates imitates such symptoms, actually he creates chaos in the spiritual life of human society.
Very nice. Thank you. Would you like to make some comment on these verses? You have a takeaway from what you've been reading?
I don't have much to say except for you can't basically you can't fake it. All this it won't allow you to fake it for long. You can try to fake it, but you won't be able to fake it because either the symptoms of bhakti will come out or you'll be rejected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So these are the words continued from Srila Ishwar Puri to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he's describing how what the transformation is in a person who's actually achieved love of Godhead, who's actually realized the holy name of Krishna as he chants. First of all, he describes that this pleasure derived from material sources, material desires, material goals, appear like a drop in the presence of the sea. Then he cites that the conclusion of all revealed scriptures is that one should awaken his dormant love of Godhead, and congratulates his disciple on having done so. And then he explains to his disciple how the holy name, the effect of love of Godhead is that transcendental symptoms appear in one's body, and it makes one more and more greedy to achieve the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. So there's this feedback loop where the devotee becomes more and more ecstatic, and the ecstasy is so great that it manifests even outwardly. And then he describes some of these transcendental symptoms. He naturally sometimes cries, sometimes laughs, sometimes chants, and sometimes runs here and there just like a madman. Those symptoms are described in different places. In Srimad-Bhagavatam, in connection with the story of Prahlad Maharaj, it's described how Prahlad Maharaj manifests these symptoms, and other places. So. And then, of course, we're warned, as Krishna Kanteya has nicely pointed out, that there are unscrupulous persons who have no love of Godhead at all, but they're displaying such so-called ecstatic bodily symptoms. And their purpose in doing so is purely material. They want some adoration, some distinction, and sometimes they want something that we don't even want to mention. But they're trying to get attention in that way. And devotees eschew that kind of behavior. Their symptoms are genuine. And naturally, we see in advanced devotees that there is a tendency for them to be very reserved about this, because it's not something that's supposed to be that they would like to display unnecessarily, because there'll be some disturbance. And of course, we've heard descriptions of how that there were times when Srila Prabhupada would be giving a class or speaking, and with his disciples, maybe in intimate settings, where there would be some display of you could tell there was some great transcendental emotion upwelling in Srila Prabhupada. So that example is there in the founder Acharya of our society as well. Any comments?
Kendra Prabhu says, I wonder how much artificial agitation of the body actually goes on in our ISKCON culture, especially among those new to the practice. just to try and fit in or attempt to socially integrate with others engaged in the practice. I'm not necessarily referring to extreme symptoms like crying or rolling on the ground, but I've seen that as well.
Yeah, it's not appropriate to tell one's own stories. But anyway, when I first joined in ISKCON in Detroit, there was a devotee there, an older Prabhupada disciple named Bhatu Gopal. And Bhatu Gopal gave these wonderful Bhagavatam classes. But I think he observed the Sahaja in me because I was just all goggle-eyed about everything about Krishna consciousness at the time, and I would stand in front of the deities and just, and he said, in the middle of a Bhagavatam class, he looked right at me hard and said, and we should not expect that Krishna is just going to look at us and start talking to us. Very nice devotee, Bhakti Gopal. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would always discount it. I think devotees sometimes we often talk about how when you first come to devotional service, you get like a special dispensation or something happens that's quite extraordinary. Then you find out a little later on that there's some real work to do as far as cleaning the heart and observing, being a good observer of your own motives and desires and so forth. But in the beginning, something really amazing happens, and many devotees have talked about it, how they're just overwhelmed by ecstasy, by happiness to be with devotees. The devotees all appear to them as some sort of extraordinary beings, purified from head to foot. And sometimes the devotees, they can become really, really outwardly exuberant, maybe seemingly too much so. So I don't think it should be completely discounted. Sometimes it's just Krishna's special dispensation, special mercy.
Kendra Prabhu said, we can count ourselves as fortunate if the devotees look at us and talk to us, especially to set us straight. Saraswati Mataji says, the saying, fake it till you make it, cannot apply to bhakti. We hear that even pure devotees think they are actually fallen. Srila Prabhupada reminds us that if in this life we are trying to be a devotee, doesn't mean you forget you were a rascal in all previous births.
Nice. We have time for one more verse. What do you think, Guru Maharaj? Should we do one more? Who would like to read? Dana, would you like to read the next verse?
I can try.
Okay.
The big one.
Okay.
Devta Kampa Roman Chashru Gada Vivarnaya Anmada Vishada Darya Garva Harshahanya Ita Bhavye Prema Bhakta Ganir Nachaya Krishnir Anadamrita Sangerpa Saya. Translation. Perspiration, trembling, standing on end of one's bodily hairs, tears, flattering voice, fading complexion, madness, melancholy, patience, pride, joy, and humility. These are various natural symptoms of ecstatic love of Godhead, which causes a devotee to dance and float in an ocean of transcendental bliss while chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami, in his Priti Sandarbha, explains this stage of love of Godhead. Bhagavat Priti Rupa Vritir Mayadi Mayi Na Bhavati Kim Tarhi Svarupa Shakti Anada Rupa Yadanada Haradinaha Sri Bhagavan Aptvati. Similarly, in the 69th text, he offers further explanation. Tad ivam pratir lakshanam chitta dravas tasya cha Roma harsadikam katachin chijate pi chitta drave Roma harsadike va na chet ashaya shudis tad api na bhaktahi samyag avirbhava iti dhyapita. Ashaya Sudhir Nama Chanya Tatsparya Arityagaha Priti Tatsparyam Cha Ata Evanimita Swabhaviki Chichati Tad Visheshanam. Transcendental love of Godhead is not under the jurisdiction of the material energy, for it is the transcendental bliss and pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since the Supreme Lord is also under the influence of transcendental bliss, when one comes in touch with such bliss and love of Godhead, one's heart melts, and the symptoms of this are standing of the hairs on end, etc. Sometimes a person thus melts and manifests these transcendental symptoms, yet at the same time is not well behaved in his personal transactions. This indicates that he has not yet reached complete perfection in devotional life. In other words, a devotee who dances in ecstasy, but after dancing and crying appears to be attracted to material affairs, has not yet reached the perfection of devotional service, which is called Ashaya Shuddhi, or the perfection of existence. One who attains the perfection of existence is completely averse to material enjoyment and engrossed in transcendental love of Godhead. It is therefore to be concluded that the ecstatic symptoms of Ashaya Shuddhi are visible when a devotee's service has no material cause and is purely spiritual in nature. These are characteristics of transcendental love of Godhead, as stated in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 6. Savai Sam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktir Ahokshate Ahaituki Apratithata Yayatsma Suprasidati. That religion is best which causes its followers to become ecstatic in love of God that is unmotivated and free from material impediments, for this alone can completely satisfy the self. Jai. I really like that Bhagavatam verse.
Yeah, very nice verse.
I apologize for any mispronunciation of all of that Sanskrit.
It's pretty good. You did well. Do you have any other comments or observations about the purport or the verse?
It got me enthused and excited just reading the translation. It was like, whoa, and I could really like feel that in the purport and just reading that. And sure, there's like plenty of times just in my own practice that I felt things, and it's those moments when it's like, whoa, what was that? And just knowing that it's like, we're so, well, I'll speak for myself, like being in the material world and fairly new to Krishna consciousness, like it's always been like, oh, I'm happy. There's got to be a reason. Like something must be about to happen, or looking like forward to something, and with learning about bhakti and Krishna consciousness and Krishna and just being in devotional service, there's this, wow, I'm like, at first it was like I'm happy, but it's like I'm not looking like outside for like why, or like looking for these other things in this world. And it's such an amazing feeling to feel that. And at the same time, when I first felt it, was kind of weird at the same time. But and it's still a practice for me. I'm not saying like I'm completely there, like where this verse is saying, like, you just completely are like transcended and gone, but there's just this like persistent like calming effect. I feel like that does happen, like especially with chanting, which didn't come at first, but it's starting to kind of really grow into that. And so when I feel myself in a certain state of being, I know I'm just gonna like start chanting and hope that it, and then it starts to help, so I'm totally rambling, but I hope you get my point.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. There's interesting comments by interesting statements by Srila Jiva Goswami, describing a person that displays these transcendental symptoms, but not being well behaved in other ways in terms of his personal behavior, his personal transactions. And Jiva Goswami says that indicates that he's not yet reached complete perfection in devotional life. And my observation of how Jiva Goswami is describing that person, and maybe someone can correct or adjust what I'm saying, but that means the person may not be on the path, but his heart isn't yet cleared. So he may display these symptoms, but because it's evidence that he is still attached in different ways to the misbehavior of a person who's under the influence of the modes of nature, that he hasn't made that much progress yet. He hasn't progressed to this platform described earlier of anartha nivritti, what to speak of ruchi and bhava and so forth. He's still in development. He may manifest some of these symptoms, but it doesn't mean that's not the whole package. The whole package is described in this verse, which you read very nicely. Savaipum samparo dharmo, that this religion causes its followers to become ecstatic in love of Godhead, and in a way that's unmotivated and free from material attachments. That religion that causes that reaction, the person develops love of Godhead. There aren't any ulterior motives. There isn't any duplicity. That can satisfy the self. So those are Prabhupada's closing words. He uses this famous Srimad-Bhagavatam verse from the second chapter of the first canto to underscore this point. It's the perfect religion, Krishna consciousness, bhakti yoga, because following in this way, one can develop to this stage of pure love of Godhead, not mixed, not partial, not materially motivated. Earlier was mentioned, that verse was cited, Caitanya Caritamrta. Caitanya Dharma is completely kicked out on this path. This is pure religion, pure spiritual culture. Anything else? I think we went over time. Someone like to lead the closing kirtan? Krishna Conte, well, anybody? I know Mari Gupta isn't able to normally for different reasons. If you could, Mari Gupta, that'd be welcome.
Well, trust me, I would really like to, but it's just not happening yet.
Okay. Thank you anyway. Krishna Kanteya?
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Guru Das Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Right. I'm going to say the Premadwani prayers, Krishna Kanteya Prabhu.
Jayam Krishna Padvam Sabhaiva Jagacharya Astotara Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnu Padvam Sabhaiva Jagacharya Astotara Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai and Nati Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prince Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Govinda, Shamakun Radhakun Gir Govardhana Ki Jai, Sri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai, Sri Mathura Dhama Ki Jai, Sri Navadvip Dhama Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Muna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the sum of devotees, all glories to the sum of devotees, all glories to the sum of devotees. Jai Sri Guru Angaranga. Jai Dasakargi Jai.
Caitanya Prabhu has a concluding comment. It's encouraging to hear these clinical diagnoses, speaking of Jiva Goswami's writings, these clinical diagnoses of those on the path, but not yet perfect. No condemnation, simply there's progress to be made.
Hare Krishna.
Real nice note to conclude on.
Good news for all of us.
Good news for us all, that's for sure.
Thank you so much, Panchatattva Prabhu. Great hearing from you and great hearing from everyone. Thank you, Krishna
Yeah.
Kanteya.
Yeah, everyone did very nicely. Hare Krishna. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj had another engagement, had to leave earlier, but
Yeah.
good to see him.
Yeah, really good. Really good. Hare Krishna.
Enlivening. All
Yeah.
right. Shri Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Right.
Jayadvaita Swami and friends ki jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrindi ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol. Hari Bol.